This is a stainless steel pan. I almost threw this away last week. You might be wondering why, and well, everything I cooked in it, no matter how much oil I used, seemed to stick to it. Now, fast forwarding a little, I figured out that it was actually user error, and I found some ways to make this fairly close to a nonstick pan. If you guys are like me, you guys probably got convinced through social media that you guys need to ditch your old pans and get a stainless steel one because there's less forever chemicals in them. I'm obviously not an expert on all that, but I got convinced to get one of these pans, and I was pretty disappointed when I realized that everything sticks to it. I wish the people recommending these pans would also let you know that there's a steep learning curve and there are a few things that you need to do differently with these pans. So with that being said, we're gonna hop into the very first step to make this pan as close as possible to a non-stick pan. So step number one, we're gonna go ahead and clean this pan as good as possible. We're just gonna use a sponge too. So just keep in mind that these pans really don't like metal and metal contact with iron wool and stuff like that. I try to be very gentle and just use a sponge while cleaning. This step, technically, we could be a little bit more rough on the pan than normal, but after we season this pan, it's going to be a little bit more delicate and we'll have a different cleaning process. Make sure you guys take your time with this step because if you don't clean it well, everything from here is not gonna be too helpful. So from here, all we're gonna do is rinse the pan out and then dry it off, and then we'll get to the next step. So that is what the pan looks like after a really good cleaning. So after your pan is nice and dry, we're gonna put it on the oven. We're going to turn this on a pretty hot setting. We're gonna do basically a medium high here. While that's heating up, we're gonna pour some oil in here. It could be any oil of your choice, but we are gonna use a pretty good amount. We want a nice puddle there, and we want to evenly kind of distribute this all over the pan. And if you guys wanted to, you guys could even use a tool, something kind of like this, to help get the oil all the way up on the sides as the pan heats up. But we're gonna give this a moment here to get to a better temperature, and then we're gonna add about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. So while this is heating up, I do just want to say, if this is helpful, make sure that you guys consider subscribing. We are getting really close to getting this channel monetized, and if we could get this monetized, it's really going to help improve the quality of the content. So please consider subscribing if you guys enjoy this video so far. That being said, let's get right back into it. All right, so our pan's been heating up for a while, and I think it's the perfect temperature to go ahead and add 1.5 teaspoons of just normal salt. So from there, I'm just gonna use a spatula. If you guys have a wooden one, I would go ahead and try and use that. And basically what we're gonna do is we're going to mix the salt and oil mixture around for about 5 minutes, all while keeping it on a medium to high heat. If it gets a little too hot, you guys could turn it down if you guys are seeing a little bit too much smoke. But you guys should see some of the salt start to absorb into the oil as it cooks. And then from there, we'll just rinse out the excess, and then we should be left with a pretty nice pan. I will say having the salt in here does seem to really help also clean the pan. As I've been moving this around, some stains that have been really hard to get out are just coming up basically. And I assume that's from just rubbing this oil salt mixture around like an exfoliant. So just while I'm mixing this in, I think now's a good time to mention just a few things that you guys should always do with your pan. Before you guys cook, you should always let it heat up for a good amount of time. We're talking a couple of minutes until you guys could throw water on the pan and it beads. If the water does not bead and roll around like a ball, it is not hot enough and you're not ready to cook yet. Basically what I've seen is that if you cook before the pan's ready, it has extra like pores and stuff that will make it stickier. Versus when you guys heat it up, it actually makes it much harder for things to stick to it. All right guys, so it's been about 5 minutes. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna set this to the side here. And then in a few more minutes, we're gonna rinse out all of the excess salt with some hot water. All right, so it's been a while. I'm gonna go ahead and pour the oil into here, and just whatever is gonna come out, I'll just pour it into this mug here, just in case the oil is still too hot for the actual drain. Now the easy part, all we have to do is just rinse this out with some hot water. I'm using hot water to avoid any warping, and that's also why I let the pan sit for a while. If you guys really want to, you guys could even use a sprayer like this, but really we're trying to keep the contact on the pan as minimal as possible, just using water if we can. And I'm sure you guys could notice the difference between this pan and the before already. This pan looks much cleaner and the water is beating up much differently. So basically that is it. That is how you guys get these stainless steel pans to function much better and more efficient. Whenever you guys are done using them to cook, what I would do is just go ahead and rinse it out with water and just get as much of the gunk out of there as possible with water in your spatula. And then if that doesn't work, you guys could use this side of the sponge and just try to avoid using the scouring side that is much more harsh. If you guys use the scouring side, you might get rid of the seasoning that you put on there, and you may have to do this entire process again. Regardless, this is going to basically be continued maintenance. So over time, maybe in a week or two, you may have to go through all these steps again, but I will say, I think it is worth it. And I've definitely enjoyed using these pans much more now that I figured out that they need to be seasoned. So with that being said, that is how you guys make these stainless steel pans as close as possible to a non-stick pan. Subscribe if this video helped you.